Welcome back to my channel. Just how crazy are the events and the reactions to them in Gaza and Israel? Clearly the situation is extremely bad with terrible suffering on both sides. But this is pretty much the case in any war. It doesn't mean the moral situation between the antagonists is equal. Today, I'll look at a noteworthy example.
A woman in Gaza, she had pulled a pot of boiling water over herself when she was like 5 or 6 years old. She goes back to Gaza after being treated for 4 or 5 years in Israel, but has a pass to get in and out of Israel. So she gets recruited to be a suicide bomber. She chose the hospital that had treated her and saved her life.
Clearly, the care provided was an act of kindness. Not exactly what you would expect from a country intent on committing genocide. Yet the girl, now a woman, decides to not only be a suicide bomber, but to deliberately target civilians who do good, including doing good for the very woman who targeted them. That's absolutely bonkers.
She tries to detonate it, it doesn't go off. She gets thrown in jail. Again, the Israelis treat her. They help her with her burns. They educate her. They give her a college degree.
Once again, the woman gets help from those she treated as enemies. So this guy goes there to talk to the woman about the whole thing.
So I get into Gaza and I bring with me an iPad that has the video of her trying to blow herself up. And I said, "What do you think?" She goes, "I'm thinking I almost tasted paradise." "Would you do it again?" "Absolutely, in a minute. This is my calling in life."
This is what massive indoctrination does. And frankly, we are seeing more and more of it in the US and the West in general, where merely expressing your free speech can lead not only to your assassination if someone on the left disagrees with you, but will have a huge percentage of other leftists who may not commit violence themselves, saying it is justified. This is how you get tyrannies. A minority of violent people whose behavior is at least tolerated by many more. Thus we get mostly peaceful protests. It's absurd. And in some Western countries, they simply don't allow free speech unless you are in a protected group, but they will put you in jail. Likewise, we've seen years of police being demonized for doing their job. Look at how automatically, if a policeman shoots someone, the media and politicians run with stories about racism being the motivation before all the facts even come out, even before any facts come out. We've seen criminals get support, while legal authorities are demonized automatically. We see people accused by influential politicians and the media of being Hitler or fascist and saying they deserve to die, and then act surprised when there is actual violence against them, right before they declare the violence is understandable. We can just look at the fairly recent death of the woman by an ICE agent. Right away, the usual suspects blame it on the agent. Yet from looking at multiple video angles, we know the woman turned her wheels so they were aimed at the agent. We know she stepped on the gas when the car was aimed at the agent. We know the wheels spun on the icy road, which means the agent is seeing a car very close to him, instantly going into high revs before it gets traction. We know the car hit the agent, but think how much worse it would have been if the car was on dry pavement and had better traction. We know the woman was there to obstruct legal action by law enforcement who were, from what I've read, there to arrest a pretty nasty person. What do we have in the woman's defense? Well, did she eventually turn her vehicle further to the right? But that was after the initial effort at hard acceleration. And people say she was just trying to escape. Well, 2 problems with that. One is that it doesn't give her an excuse to hit an agent with her vehicle. Second, her wife was starting to open the door to get in when this woman hit the gas. Why wouldn't she wait until her partner got in the car with her if the goal was just to get away? Abandoning her wife doesn't seem logical to me. Is it possible she wasn't trying to hit the agent? Sure, it's possible. But law enforcement doesn't have to wait until they may or may not be hit and killed by a woman driving a vehicle weighing a couple tons. Oh, 2 more things that are related. One is that everyone in law enforcement has heard the hate speech against them, and much of which tries to justify violence against them for years, which makes every confrontation even more dangerous. That is, because of the extremist rhetoric from the left promoting violence. Related to that is that I believe this particular agent had previously already been dragged by a car not long ago, so the threat was very real to him. It's so easy for outsiders to act like what that woman did was no big deal. And do the people making an issue about how the woman had a couple children who have now lost a parent really care? Of course they should, but I question the sincerity of most of them because so many of those same people had no such concern when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He also had 2 kids. He wasn't obstructing or interfering with anyone else. He was just giving his views and even bringing those who disagreed with him to the front of the line. But for the left, there was little concern for that assassination about his mere speech. So, no, I don't believe many on the left care about this woman's death or her children. I do believe they find the tragedy to be useful for their propaganda and to promote more violence. In other words, I agree with this black woman's reaction to the shooting.
Oh, so now you guys care about white women. Not the white women that were sexually assaulted and killed by illegals. Not the white woman that was stabbed in a train. Not the white woman that was burned to death by an illegal in New York. And you definitely didn't care about the white woman that was shot and killed on January 6th. Now all of a sudden you guys are crying and enraged and super sad.
I think that describes things quite well and probably explains the vastly different amount of coverage these various incidences have gotten from the media. But back to the incident with a woman from Gaza.
These people treated you in all of your burns. They saved your life. You tried to blow them up. They still treated you. They educated you. And now you have a chance at life back here in Gaza. And you'd want to blow them up. And she goes, absolutely.
Like I said, this is what generations of indoctrination lead to.
Are the Israelis perfect? No, but that's what they're up against.
This is certainly true. We hear a lot about civilians killed in Gaza, but we hear little about how their enemy deliberately hides behind civilians. What is Israel supposed to do? Just say they won't attack an enemy as long as they're using human shields? That would just mean more human shields. You know, in World War II, a lot of civilians were killed, like 45 million. Do you really think the Allies would have won if they refused to use weapons if civilians were at risk? Sure, you can say it would have been better to lose the war rather than have 45 million civilians, plus servicemen, die. But do you really think living under Nazism would be better? Do you really think the killing wouldn't happen? Talk to the Jews in Europe about that. It's especially strange that Israel gets such criticism from people who ignore the fact that the latest violence in Gaza came about because radical Muslims deliberately sought out civilians to kill and kidnap, including babies. And you might also ask yourself, what would happen if the Muslims disarmed and stopped their attacks? Then compare that to what would happen if Israel did so instead. Then you'd see who really wanted to commit genocide. The terrorist rhetoric of "from the river to the sea" doesn't leave much room for doubt as to their intentions. Where are those on the left who claim to be all for diversity, but somehow are fine with those who would like to totally remove a non-Muslim country from the Middle East? But more than anything else, consider that last clip about what Israel is up against when they face attitudes like that woman has. What would you do if faced with the same situation? You can't make a good argument that if you were just nice to people who have been brought up to hate you, that they will be nice in return. If you let an enemy hide behind civilians while that enemy targets civilians, you will lose every time. That doesn't mean you go out of your way to target civilians yourself. But in that situation, civilians are going to die. It's not a good situation, but I don't think there's any option that avoids the bad things war brings. Refusing to go to war when attacked isn't going to save lives. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.